Hello, welcome to today's video. Today we're going to talk about tasks in Snowflake. So a task in Snowflake is events depends on some kind of condition. So it can either depends on fixed trigger or it can depends on a timed schedule. I've encountered this use case in my work, so I think it's a very good use case to do a demo on the topic. So the idea is we're gonna have some kind of task, one, two, three, which is loading into some tables. So you can imagine you have a data pipeline process. You want to move from one location to another location. Each stage, each task is triggered, the fourth stage, we're gonna create some kind of summarized table, kind of produce a report. So the report produced within the holding table, then further downstream, your data pipeline, some kind of process can pick up. In the visualization, I created is an Outlook app, which people can see, probably a link here, how and the user can trigger the data itself without care about the background process. Let's go to the Snowflake sheet, have a look, a bit more context. So once we set up some kind of demo environment, let's just look one of the table. So I preloaded the table. So you have your source table, almost you have your data lake. In the demo, we call that site A, site B, and C. So you can imagine this is being, say, you have S3 bucket locations, you can have your shared drive, you have OneDrive locations, Google Drive, or Tableau server. You have various assets, various objects that live in different locations. You have some kind of data engineering process to pipe all the information into a central location, your Snowflake table. In the table, this is a dummy table. What we really interested is one, site name, so where the item come from. We can give some kind of item name. I just call the table. Other objects, you may have some kind of metadata that's relevant to the data. So for us, clearly, the demo is about we're going to move some outdated items. So we have created date, last updated date to calculate that. You may have other conditions. For example, you may have a tag column that can be used to trigger your events, filter by a particular tag, or you can filter by your cost centers. The idea is we have in the source table, we can load it various things. Then among the source table, we're going to filter out to some particular objects we're interested. So for example, we can save that into a view. Yes, in the comment below, the general idea is almost we can save your items. Let me reduce the highlight. You can almost have create a view, materialize a view, or even the new feature like dynamic tables. Those keep track, change, or things. Can we do those? Yes. Task is not necessarily the only option to do this particular demo. But the idea is for, say, a dynamic table, you have some CDC captures. You want to understand what happened really in the background. In Snowflake, it's pretty much created by using tasks and a string to constantly keep track change. It's good to understand the fundamental of things, then it's easier to understand more complicated structure, how they build up. This is a pretty good example to pretty simple example as well to have a look. So let's have a look. The first thing I did is to create a holding table. So that's kind of the almost a dummy view, a temp table, transient table, whatever you want to use it to create our reports. So we're going to load our various assets we're interested into this table. The next, let's talk about tasks. Once we have some kind of location, a stage is set, then you can start loading things in it. To create a task, which is a very standard statement to create, we're going to decide which warehouse to use. For the first task, I want to create is a scheduled. So in this case, we have the particular format to call it daytime events. So the order is from the granular time to the more higher order. So the first digit represents the minutes, then you have the hours, day, months, and year. So for us, you can read, we have 0 minutes, we're going for at the third hour, 3 a.m., the first day of the month, we're going to take from month 1 to month 12. So every single month, we're going to run monthly and the first day a daily schedule. In the statement itself, It's about, I use the select statement. So for me, we are interested to load our condition table into the holding table. Follow down, we can see set B. I will just rinse and repeat. We'll do the exact same thing. The only thing different is the after statement. So for a task, you can chain your task. For you have various different way to chain it. You can either chain like in the demo here, going to be series. So you run the first task. Once that's done, let's trigger the second task. Or you can operate a parallel task. So task 2 depends on the root task. Task 3 depends on root task, etc. For set C, we're going to do the same thing. You can see we're going to chain after task 2 trigger events. If you look at the flow chart, there's a screenshot I took from the Snowflake website. You can do things in parallel. Yes, it can be more performant, depends on what kind of things you have. Because at the moment, for this demo, I want to create a report that depends on all previous tables loaded. So I don't want to do a separate parallel process. Otherwise, the stopping condition, you got to really think about it. Once your task is done, let's actually run the first state here, the select state first. We're going to see in the holding table, there's nothing loaded yet because the tasks are set up are not run by default. You got to actually trigger the task. You got to switch on the task. The coding here, let's say we use resume task. When you ever do things, always make sure each task you triggered, you created is resumed, otherwise it will not run. Root child task by default is suspended. If you cannot trigger, make sure you handle the root task as well. Sometimes if you have too many tasks, rather than say you have 10 tasks, rather than create a 10 command of out task, you may want to just do in one go. We do have a command that's assistance command. You can enable all dependent tasks on the root task, so it cascades down. Of course, it's a little bit fiddly when you first set a task up. You may be annoying to track what's happening, but this design is prevent things cascade. So, for example, you want to design a single stage within that you may not want that to operate, or you have further down the string you got to build. You do not want to just automatically trigger everything. Nevertheless, I will continue to select our table. Nothing is triggered yet because first the root task is set as schedule. The time hasn't kicked in yet. If you do want to create the task, you can manually trigger it. We'll see. But before we do all those things, we're going to build one more task. So the first task is the reporting table. The context is, let's go back to this flowchart. So once you have loaded table, you aggregate various resource, various assets belong to each user. I want to send some kind of email notification to the end user. So that's the individual report I want to create. I do not want to send all the lists to everyone in one go. I want the list to be dependent on per user level. And that is in the nested select statement. So I want to group by user ID, then I'll create a dummy string to create a report ID. Then we can look back for each report. We look at the asset. Okay, for user 1, I have 10 assets in different locations. Let's group it. For report 2, that's for user ID 2. We have a different list of assets. Let's group it. So let's operate this task. We cannot update a task because our root task is not suspended. So let's go up top and task first. We got to switch everything off before we can adding things onto it on task. So we added the first task. Now remember, you have to trigger your task once it's created. I learned my lesson for multiple recording for this video. So let's run this command again. So we'll enable all the root tasks, all the child tasks respective particular root task. Another little note, when I was creating the demo, by default, your owner of the task does not necessarily have the grant by default. So you do actually need to switch to your admin account to grant the ability to execute the task. You do it once, it works okay. But for the first time, you got to be careful about this. With the task set up, let's actually trigger the event to see how that plays out. We can manually trigger it by using execute task command. So if we execute on the root task first, then let's see. Let's quickly select first table. So the task is operate in series at the moment. So the task one is create a table, task two, loading stuff. Let's run this again. So you can see we have some data loaded. So that's probably one of the tasks being triggered. If we look our asset type, we have ABC. So the task one triggers loading set A, task two, load set B. So we probably have two of tasks being triggered. The key thing is report ID at the moment, the first column. We'll notice it's now because the last task, task 4, the creating table, haven't been triggered yet. So time has passed a bit. Let's run this select statement again. Hopefully we can see. Drag it up. Now we can see our report ID has loaded some things. So the last task, task 4, has been triggered. Some data has been grouped. For us, we have set ABC, so we have 3 sites. So task 1, 2, 3, that corresponding to loading 3 tables, happened. In this report ID, we can see we have 10 distinct values. So for me, in a dummy data set, I created 10 users. So each user have their own individual report. A bit context for the next stage. So you can see I do have some, it's blank. So when the user ID is 0, that probably could be used to indicate the person now has left the companies, so they don't have an account anymore. The further down the string, I use user ID to link email to trigger the notification. If they left companies, they don't have an email, we cannot send them. So those null values can be just probably passed out as a batch, automatically set up as a delete. Further downstream, if we just copy, say, one report ID, let's search that. So we can see we have one single report for owner for the user ID 10. Then you have various your asset. Your asset, let's see, we have some assets in A, some in B. So this can produce a customized report. So hopefully, this is a quick demonstration how we play with the tasks. How we're gonna use this table. Again, here's a link for my second video for the user interface in Outreach. That's used for user to feedback. Our aim is for the user to interact with this table, then return the status column for us. So we can update it, then further downstream, we can start to pick up among the individual items how we're going to handle the process. So thank you for watching the video and give a try on the Snowflake